Chris from Sylvia's Place. That's you.
Mother! I love your mom!
Some of you know me and some of you don't. It's Christopher Collazo. I'm the residential for everything. And that really does speak to the crisis that we have in the city, where professionals like myself have to work 60 and 70 hours a week just to help 26 or 30 people at a time.
Woo!
Don't have a speech prepared, but I always contemplate. I'm a person who contemplates a lot. And one of the things that I always contemplate is I go home every night and I'm addicted to CNN. I don't know. It's boring, but I like it. Maybe because after a long, hard day of trying to help people and a long, hard day of, you know, really dealing with real crisis, sometimes it's good just to listen to, for a lack of a better term, BS-cherie.
Yes, mother.
And one thing I always hear is family values. And that's really interesting, because when I hear about family values, I think about a home, I think about children, I think about youth, I think about people growing, people being fed. I think about the simple things, washing yourself, sitting down to a meal and talking with somebody, crying and having a parent there hold you. Even if you're not crying for anything, maybe you're just crying to cry, and sometimes a good cry is a good cry. But the point is you have somebody there. And how is it that in a society today we talk about family values and the good home and you know what's right and what's wrong, when because somebody the way they were born, and I'm not just talking about LGBT, I'm talking about, mental retardation, I'm talking about cognitive disabilities, I'm talking about people who have a deep disposition to substance abuse. How is it that you can call yourself a parent? And we know from the literature and from sociology and psychology, and being a parent is unconditional positive regard. But when you're faced with these challenges, it's so easy to say, can you please leave my house? And I'm saying it lightly, I'm saying it nice. I get to hear a story where a parent really says, can you please leave my house? It's usually 911, can you get this intruder out there 18 years old? And then when I think about family values, I also think about, this whole thing about the New York City educational system, and they talk about no child left behind.
Right.
Too many are left behind.
And that's the thing. That's the thing. Because every night, 7 to 8 people knock on Sylvia's Place door. And if we say that no child is left behind, aren't these children?
Yep.
Who's with them? I'm sorry, when you're alone, I feel like you've been left behind. When you face discrimination in a public educational system and you can no longer, not because you have a cognitive disability, not because you don't go to school, not because you don't do your homework, but because the teachers, because their fellow students, because principals, because of police officers and securities, that you can no longer enter the building where the government pays for you to get a free education. Then aren't you being left behind? And that's what I wonder. Or maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm not getting it. Because I see policy and I see procedure and I see senators and congress people and mayors and, and they have these great words. I mean, words have power. I don't know if you've ever seen this commercial. It's a beautiful commercial. And it's a homeless guy. And I believe it's in Australia. And he's sitting, it's a beautiful day, and people are passing him by. And nobody's giving him change or anything like that, and he's blind. Right? And this one lady goes to pass by him, and as she goes to pass by him, she stops for a minute, but she doesn't give him anything. She picks up the sign and she changes it. But you really don't see this in the beginning. You just see her writing something, and she walks away. And as she walks away for the rest of the day, all these individuals just keep putting money and putting money and putting money and putting money. And she comes at the end of her workday, she walks past the same gentleman. And the gentleman recognizes her and asks her, what did you do? And she said, I just changed the words. And when the screen shots in, you see the original sign says, I'm homeless, please give me something. And she changes, it's a beautiful day outside, unfortunately I can't see it. And that was what made people actually stop and think. And what I want to say is, it's great that people have housing and people have this and jobs and economy, but it's a beautiful day outside and a lot of you can't see it. You know, we want to talk about, well, let's get them housing and let's get them this and let's get them that. But you know what? When the average rent is $800 and $900 and the average youth does not have a high school diploma, what type of housing can you live in? When a person is flipping burgers and earning $7.25, but yet the corporation is only paying you for 20 hours. But in fact, you're actually there for 40 and 50 because if anybody has ever done food services, I've done food services, I've done 3 and 4 jobs at the same time. You know that they require you 2 hours to come in before with 2 set, prepare, and they're not going to pay you. So, how do you expect the youth to even deal with their own problems? When the people who are elected to help them deal with the problems, to allocate the money, to actually do reformative change, they're apathetic. And that's a big word lately. Because I think the apathy doesn't only run in the straight community. I think it runs in the LGBTQI community. Many times I've done fundraisers, I've gone to events, and it's great, I see 5, 6 people. But in a city like New York City, the epicenter of queer people in the United States, and we do a fundraiser, and 10 people show up, that's apathy. Now mind you, statistics tells us LGBT individuals are more likely not to have children, and because they don't have children, they have disposable incomes. So you would think that if you had disposable income, you would dispose of it in your own community. But again, there's that apathy. And there's that lack of understanding. There's that lack of, you know, community. You know, Stonewall riots, it was about community. It was about change. It was about, you know, getting things together and rising as a one. But then that apathy. It was an interesting conversation. It was interesting. Apathy. Apathy is a good friend to indifference. Indifference is a good friend to not caring about anyone. And that's hard to address. It's hard to address in a society that, number one, does not accept you as a community, let alone if you're LGBT, let alone if you're a person of color, let alone if you're a youth. Because guess what? It's not my problem, you're not my child. And that's easy to say. That's easy to say at these times. You're not my child, you're not my problem, you're not this. But
They're all our children.
you get annoyed when they're on the A train asking for money every day. You get annoyed when they're in front of your blocks playing music, like any 18 and 17 and 16-year-old does. I mean, I'm 27 years old. Right now I can't stand music, but I know when I was 18, I could barely hear it. But then another question comes up, and another thing that I put to mind is, you know, as people of the LGBTQ community, another crisis that we faced that was almost similar was the whole AIDS epidemic, and we're still facing it, right? And a lot of things I hear amongst my youth is, oh, well, I'll get HIV positive and I'll get services.
We don't want it that way.
But you know what? Okay, you do get HIV positive and you do get services. But how many landlords are actually going to accept HACA? And if they do, HACA cap is only $940. And an average one bedroom or studio is $1,100. So you know what? Forgive me for saying it, but you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And you know, it's great that we have all these services and everything like that, you know, medical vans and drop-ins and everything like that. And it's fantastic. But as a human service professional, I was always taught that the role of social services was to connect an individual to the resources in the community. Well, if there are no resources in the community, how can you fund programs to connect them to the resources that you are not willing to provide? I don't know about you, but I mean, that seems illogical. But then I don't know much about logic these days. Because, again, that whole apathy thing, when you put it into the equation and you factor all the things, it just doesn't add up. But then again, you know, I see politicians and I see, you know, advocates and everything like that, and they try and they try and they try and they try. Well, they say they try. Maybe that's the word. Maybe that's the word that I'm looking for. They say they try. But I believe that there's a difference between saying and doing. But maybe again, maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe I'm going on in tangents because, you know, when I'm sitting there with people who want to commit suicide and I'm sitting there with people who have hope, you know, it's hard to concentrate because you're trying to help the individual, you know, and that's something profound. It's profound, you know, that I don't know where I read this at, but the statistic is 1 in 10 make it. 1 in 10. 1 in 10. And 1 in 10 is a hard number to swallow. That means 9 people are either in jail, dead, or someplace else. So, you know, we talk about let's get drugs to Africa and Malaysia, and let's get condoms here and there, and treatments for this and treatments for that. And that's fine and dandy. I'm all for it. But how dare you say those kind of things and see a homeless youth on the street who hasn't eaten in 5 days and you can still walk past that person? That's my question. Then again, I guess it's apathy. And that's the concept I still haven't learned yet. Maybe I'm not choosing to learn.
That's
But
a good thing.
if I want to say anything today, or anything to everybody here and anybody who's watching, I think that it's maybe we need to first recognize the own apathy that we have within ourselves. And it's not so much about thinking about the fellow person or not. It's about thinking that we are social animals, and as social animals, we rely on communities and social structures. And if we rely on communities and social structures in order to survive, if our social structure is degrading, then if we purely just think about ourselves, then what does that mean about the self and where we will be? So wouldn't it be a better investment to invest in others? Because isn't it investing in others also an investment in ourselves?
Yeah.
But then again, maybe it's just my apathy.